I'll be talking a bit about like how we do CI internally at Dagger. Essentially, like, yeah, a little bit about like what I do. I work in like the core team in engineering, and so that kind of means I work a lot on the engine, the CLI, various bits and pieces like that. As you know, well as helping now manage our release process. And so I do our releases, write release notes, kind of manage milestones, little bits and pieces like that, issue triage, all those kind of things. So one of the big focuses of stuff that I've been working on at the moment is actually improving our own CI to use Dagger. There is a lot going on in our own CI, and we have been using, Dagger since day one. But with lots of the Dagger functions stuff that's come out recently, we weren't immediately using those. And so in like the last month or so, we've kind of started using those completely. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to like take a dive into like how we're using those, maybe to provide some inspiration for how other people might want to adopt it and use it, as well as show some of the things that we've found in the process of doing that, and some of the benefits it's kind of had for us. So kind of like to provide like a little bit of contrast, I thought this is like an old version of Dagger 0.10.3, and this was before we kind of made that transition. What we had before was like we used Mage, which is a wrapper for Go, to kind of provide like a simple interface for CRCI jobs. And what that kind of looked like is, we had for example, like a linting job, we have all of our imports, lots of code, and then we have, our job kind of looks like this. It's a function, and we connect to like the Dagger engine, as you might do, and start a bunch of kind of like jobs and call into them. Run go mod tidy, compare that to things before, run golang ci lint. But kind of like there's a few issues with this. One, Mage is quite limited in what it can do. It kind of can't handle like optional arguments, default arguments. It really struggles with a lot of parameters. And so you end up kind of falling back to lots of environment variables. And you can see that where we do our publishing. We have to get a bunch of host environment things. It also requires Go actually be installed on the system you're running this on. And as you can imagine, the issue that this leads into is like the promise of Dagger is to have everything be consistent everywhere, but we kind of don't hit that with this. Everything is very reliant still on the system we're running it on.
Justin, could I interrupt you really quick and have you minimize that Zoom window? I guess it's showing up for everybody and they want to see your beautiful code.
Oh, yeah, sure. Of course.
That looks great. That works there. Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, didn't realize it shows up for everyone. We have like these environment variables here, essentially like those access like the host and stuff like that. And so we kind of it's very much less explicit than we want it to be. And so if I can compare these jobs to like what I've ported into our new code, that these old files are completely gone, and they're replaced now with a slightly different setup. Where that linked job now becomes, search for that. Yeah, here we go. I just need to run Dagger develop to make sure that we get all the generated code and stuff like that. That's not right. That's exciting. Not 100% sure why that happened there. I think I'm probably inside some sort of weird environment. That's an issue to debug another time. But assuming that was not happening, I would have like all of these, all of this code specifically around like doing this. But now, I can pass specific arguments. None of this has access to any of my host's environment. There's a bunch of Go code and stuff in different places, and it can all be loaded. I can write all my same like Dagger code here. But now all of this is a specific Dagger function, which can be called using Dagger call, and I can run it like this. There's no need for like special wrapper scripts or anything like that. We managed to get rid of like almost all of those, and it can now be run. Again, not quite sure what it's all about. Maybe if maybe a different That is interesting. Not quite sure. Yeah, so, apologies.
It depends on
Thought I
the
was
Dagger.
going to.
Maybe you're a development Dagger version or something. You're always
Yeah, I
working on
thought
something.
that could be it. Yeah, probably something in my environment somewhere, but I do not quite understand what's going on. But oh well.
Live demos.
Yeah, live demos. It worked moments ago, I promise you. So thankfully I'm not too reliant on those because I want to show like how these actually integrate into our CI, which is like this is just kind of like, yeah, super simple setup stuff. But the more interesting bit is like we now those jobs that I can run locally, ideally when I'm not doing a live demo, those are also what run in our CI. And so, I can look at this that same job that ran on like the last commit that merged. I can look for that in the long list of jobs we have. Yeah, that's here. You can see it ran in GitHub Actions here, which is where we have all of our logic. You can see here, the actual job runs here. And it does that kind of produces all this output, does all of those things here. And this is exactly the same job that I would run locally, remotely. It doesn't depend on like specific versions of Go being installed. Actually, all that needs to exist now is the, Dagger CLI installed. But I think while that's kind of interesting, what I've been using a lot more personally is like some of the new stuff in Dagger Cloud to kind of view these logs in a bit of an easier way. And so this same job from GitHub Actions would look like this in Dagger Cloud. I can zoom in a bit as well. And so what this looks like now is that I can see kind of the hierarchical nature of like what's going on. I can see how kind of all of that works and see like how long everything takes. So if I click, I can see here that the most of the time has been taken up by the lint part of the job, which is what I'd expect, and it's Golang CI lint. And so if I click on that, it should open up into some more details, and I can see like the logs for what's happened here, and like process logs from each individual part instead of kind of getting them like all combined in one big mess here. I have kind of started using this recently. I didn't use this a lot before, but it's been really interesting, like working with the team that's working on this to kind of like build stuff that is actually usable for some of the complexity of our own CI, which is really fun. The thing that's been really exciting for me using this has been getting like significantly better insights into performance. One of the upcoming things that I've been working on a lot is like I've seen like this step here about initialization and uploading directories from kind of the client has been taking way too long. And so I've been working on some stuff to kind of try and bring those times down a little bit, make them a bit faster, and essentially like speed up the CI. But before, like trying to understand those from raw logs before has been really difficult, and it's been nice to kind of like understand how that works. One of the other things, like I think this is like a successful job, but like we have some failed jobs somewhere. This has been like really interesting in like debugging some of the flakiness. So we have like a job test here failing. The logs for these jobs are absolutely massive, several hundred megabytes. This is partially accidental, partially intentional. The logs are too large, but also they need to be large because, we're testing the Dagger engine inside Dagger here. They're not even loading. But what's been kind of cool is to use those from Dagger Cloud, which might take a little moment to load, potentially, depending on how it feels.
These are massive. You could say these are like you get like big logs going on. So
these have been really difficult to debug and been like a real pain to try and understand like what's going on, what kind of things. We've had a number of like CI flakes that have proved very complicated recently to debug, and like I think Eric has been working on like trying to dive into those and understand what's going on. Some very intricate internal issues, but it's been difficult to tell at a glance whether like a failure is legitimate if it's not, and trying to download and understand those logs is difficult. This has made it a little bit easier, and so I can see here that the job has failed with lots of errors. But inside these logs, I can pull those up and specifically like just search for like fail in here. and see, yes, this specific thing failed. Test module TypeScript with other module types. And I can kind of see specific logs and then scroll through like all the fun parts of like that. And so like definitely it's kind of like we've been using this to then inform like what decisions, what UI things need to be updated here and provide feedback for things like that, as well as like what needs to be done in functions. Like the number of times that I was working on like porting our own CI to use Dagger functions and modules, and the number of times we ran into things, it's like you just couldn't express certain things in the way that we wanted to. And so that was then it was off down a little trail to work on something else. And build something a little bit better, add some new features, fix some performance bugs. It's been really interesting, and yeah, really looking forward to like continuing to do that in the future.
So dog fooding for the win, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, looking forward to doing a lot more. To be fair, like yeah, I think we've only scratched the surface, and yeah, it's definitely like it's without kind of I think this step, it ends up in a scenario where we just hear about like bugs from users and don't get to experience them. And I think it's important that we get to feel the pain of our own things as well. And the successes, but also the pain points that people run into. But yeah, hopefully, yeah, that was a bit of dive into like what we do for dog fooding here.